You're listening to All In. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you fulfill the mission of God in your life and around the world. I'm your host, Jeff Wilbur. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of All In. I certainly do appreciate you taking time out of your busy life and schedule to spend a few minutes with me pursuing the mission of God. This week I'd like to share with you a verse out of Matthew chapter 13, verse 45 and 46. It says, "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant in search of fine pearls, who on finding one pearl of great price went and sold all that he had and bought it." You know, as a merchant, you normally don't want to put all of your eggs in one basket, as we say, but apparently this merchant found a pearl of such infinite worth that he sold everything he had in order to possess it. And Jesus said that's what the kingdom is like. And you know, you and we've been caught up, raptured up, as it were, in ecstasy of the glory of God and His kingdom, and the worthiness of Jesus Christ and His mission to upright this world that has fallen over. You and I have found this pearl of great price. And we are called to respond the same way, which is to sell everything we have, to go, as the title of this podcast says it, to go all in. We're all in 100%. And you know, sometimes when you're offering yourself up to the Lord, you may feel like I do. I go, Lord, it's not much, but it's everything I've got. When you pour your life out to Him, you offer it up to Him, and it's the visceral experience of pouring your heart out to Him and saying, Lord, whatever you can do with my life, broken and whole, redeemed and fallen, every aspect of me, I offer it up to you. I give it all to you. It's not much, but it's everything I have. Each one of us have the same calling, and that is to participate in the mission of God, to participate with God in His pursuit of uprighting this world that has fallen over. And He's uprighting this world through Jesus Christ. Now, we all have the same mission, but we all have different assignments. Your assignment may be as a pastor or a lawyer, a ditch digger, a worship leader, a missionary. We all have different assignments, but we all share the same mission. And whatever your assignment is, you're supposed to have the same response. Go all in. Go all in. And I want to do something this week that's going to be a little different than what I've done before, but it's in the stream of what we started in episode 35. In episode 35, I interviewed Jonathon and Sara Griffiths, who have said yes to God's call to mission. And we'll include links in the show notes to that particular episode. And when I was interviewing them in that episode, they were just a few days from having a conversation with their 3 young kids and with their congregation that they would be resigning their church and moving to the United Kingdom to help us in launching a new church planting movement amongst the British people. So in that episode, we talk about what they're going through, what it's like, because I wanted to give you an insider's view of this whole process. And then in episode 36, I phoned them up a couple of days after that announcement, that Sunday where they announced to they talked to their kids and they talked to their congregation about this huge transition and what they're going through. And then last month I was with them in Nampa, Idaho, and while there I sat down with Jim and Lynn Adams, who happened to be Sarah's mom and dad, and of course the grandparents of those 3 wonderful little boys. Jim and Lynn Adams are the leaders of Creative Impact Ministries, and I'd encourage you to check them out as well, creativeimpactministries.org. Well, you can imagine as parents and as grandparents finding out that your kids are leaving, what that must do to you. Jim had mentored Jonathan, had raised him up within the church, and even turned the church over. Jim had been the pastor of the church that Jonathan is at present pastoring, and he turned it over to them. And at one time, Jim and I were talking about a year and a half ago, and he said, "Now you keep your hands off Johnny. Don't touch him." And of course, God has other plans. And I sat down with Jim and Lynn and had an interview with them because I wanted to get their perspective of what it's like to walk through this, of the consequences of going all in, because they had a choice to make as well. That they too had found the pearl of great price, and in this assignment to the United Kingdom, they had a different assignment, but they had a part of the same calling. And their only correct response that they could say was, "Yes, Lord, you are worthy. You are the pearl of great price." So I wanted to give you this interview and let you catch a little bit of their heart and what it was like for them. I hope you enjoy it. Hey everybody, we're doing a field check on how Johnny and Sara Griffiths are doing in their deployment to be missionaries to the United Kingdom. And during our journey, we're going to be giving you little snippets and glimpses of what it's like, not only for the couple as they prepare, but as how does this affect their extended family, their local church. I happened to be here in Nampa, Idaho this week, spoke at their church, talked with them, and I'm glad to say I did not need a bodyguard, that they were so angry I stole their pastor from them, but they're actually willingly, reluctantly, but willingly and joyfully sending this family to the mission field. And I have the privilege of having here with me Sarah's mom and dad, and they were the ones I was most afraid of, because prior to me talking to Jonathan about going to the UK, going to London, Jim Adams, who was sitting here beside me, had told me, "Now you keep your hands off of him, leave him alone." And then shortly after that, being a good, obedient Christian, I went and talked to Jonathan about London. So I wanted to pick their brains and hear a little bit of their story about what it was like when Sara and Jonathan came and talked to them. Because about both parents and now grandparents, the anguish of what that's like. And I just want you to get a front row view of what it's like when someone says yes to this radical call to the mission field. So, Jim and Lynn Adams, welcome to the podcast today. Thank you for being able to. Thank you for being here. So, I want to get your input. What was it like? Tell me how Sara and Jonathan broke the news to you.
It was in January, I think, that they invited us over, and we knew that something was up, because it wasn't. I mean, we see them all the time, but this was somehow some kind of a special meeting. We didn't know what it was about, and so we came over, and I think, did we have dinner or was it after dinner? I can't really remember, but we were hanging out together, and you could see it all over their faces. Something was up. We had no idea what it was, and they broke the news to us that they were thinking that God had called them into missions to go back to Jonathan's home country in England. And we were pretty shocked at first.
Mm-hmm.
They had, I was the pastor of the church for 20 years, and Jonathan, I had mentored John, and he had been the son-in-law that we didn't even have faith to pray for. I mean, just a wonderful guy, and a pastor that I was so enthusiastic about, because he had so many qualities that surpassed any gifting that I had, and I was so pleased to be able to go to church there with my son-in-law preaching,
and that's saying a lot for a father-in-law to be able to say about his son-in-law. That's amazing.
Yeah. And so it just seemed like it was this couldn't possibly be. They had prayed for a year about their dream home. We're sitting in it right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is the home that Sarah and John had dreamed about.
Mm-hmm.
It's a perfect place. Church was really going well. There was wonderful progress taking place. It just seemed, I'm talking about initial reactions.
Mm-hmm.
It just seemed like a huge interruption.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course there's our grandsons and my daughter and all of that. It was a pretty tough pill to swallow at first.
What about you, Lynn? What was it like?
Well, it's kind of interesting because my dad was a missionary.
Okay. To which country?
Well, to the Navajo Reservation.
Oh, that's right.
In
Okay,
Arizona.
Yeah,
So I grew up on the Navajo Reservation, and Jim and I were missionaries for a couple of years right out of Bible college back in the 70s in South America. And we had always wanted to go back into missions, and so now the past 3 years we serve missionaries. And so missions is definitely something that we're very interested in and very excited about. So, but when John and Sara told us, what's interesting about it is I didn't like the news. And I didn't want that kind of news, because for us, it felt really good here. The good thing was we were still here at our church we'd been at for 23 years. John and Sara were the pastors doing a great job. Our grandkids were here, and we liked the way things were. So it was hard, and we didn't really want that news. And we found out early on, earlier than the church, quite a few months earlier, they were still in this, praying about this and trying to discern if this is where God was leading them. But you could tell the likelihood was definitely there. So I just hoped that they were wrong.
That this actually wasn't. That they would end up saying, "No, sorry, it was."
We messed up.
It was just a fleeting thought.
I just hoped that they were wrong, but I wasn't at all surprised as things progressed that they weren't wrong.
And how did that happen? What was developing for both of you guys as you were going through it? Because it's not just Jonathon and Sara. It's you guys. It's and your faith, your life, everything on the being ripped, emotionally being ripped apart.
Well, you got to remember, this is a man leading his family to follow Jesus, a guy that I know intimately. I mean, we worked together as pastors for several years, and then I mentored him to become the senior pastor. I know the kind of man John is. I know the kind of woman my daughter is. And so I've always taken a pretty hands-off approach. I understand that in our relationship with them, I could get really selfish and could be, kind of whiny or controlly or whatever. And I saw that producing no good fruit. And I trust them. I trust them to hear God. And as they processed it, and we began to hear more and more of the pieces falling into place, it became undeniable, the kind of confirming things that God was sending their way on this. And so, even though it is still emotionally hard, I mean, I can tear up thinking about not. I mean, for many years they lived 2 blocks from us. We weren't exactly everybody loves Raymond kind of a family, but we were in each other's homes all the time. And so the idea of them now, of only getting to see them who knows how often, it's gonna be a long distance relationship now, and that's still hard, but we're so convinced that this is what God is doing that we will manage. We are managing.
How did you both come to a point in your own personal heart, in your own private world, your own heart, that this was the plan of God? What was that like?
I think for me, a lot of it was as I thought about it, it really made sense. You know, I mean, John is British.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he's from. Sarah went there as a volunteer with Youth for Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they met. When they got engaged and decided to get married, they chose the United States,
Mm-hmm.
and they chose to come and live in the town where we lived, which we were, of course, thrilled about that.
Right.
So they've been here. John's been here 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
They've been married 11 years. But as you see the progression of how God has taken a British graduate of Birmingham University, and he came to the United States, and he became Foursquare,
Mm-hmm.
and was mentored, and he's pastored a church, and he's been through all the things that a good missionary should go through before they go to the mission field, and he's learned a lot.
Yeah.
And he's a mature man, and it's the perfect setup for a missionary to Great Britain. How
long did it take from the initial them telling you this is what we're praying about until Lynn, you came to a point of being at peace and saying this is God?
Well, I don't think that part took very long because I saw how John and Sara were praying.
Okay.
And how they were seeking God. How they were not making quick decisions, and they weren't making an emotional decision like, gee, it sure would be nice to be in England, it would be easier, or it would be better in some way. That wasn't at all in the process. They were really seeking what God had, because as you know, the initial thought wasn't appealing to them.
No.
They had never crossed their minds, and it was the Holy Spirit that began to speak to their hearts. And so the way they processed it was good. It was mature.
Yeah.
They took their time to really seek God. And so it didn't take long to realize that they weren't chasing after something that they didn't have here. They were just chasing after the heart of God and what He wanted for them.
That's really good. And they weren't running away from anything.
No,
I mean,
not
they
at
really.
all.
I mean, staying here in their home, and I'm looking around, and I'm thinking, this is what a great setup to raise a family.
Yeah.
Being at the church this morning, what a healthy, loving church.
Right.
You know, if I could just say, frankly, you and I probably have both heard a lot of pastoral change decisions that are prefaced by, well, we just think God is leading us in it. But when you know the story behind what they're saying, you're going, wait a minute, there's a certain amount of let's get the heck out of here.
Yeah, exactly. Let's flee.
And that is not at all what is happening here.
No.
It was such a shot out of the blue that, now see, I'm not of the school that says that God's not in it unless you don't want to do it.
Right. No, of course not. Yeah.
I mean, there are people that think that if you want to do something, it must not be God. But neither am I of the school that says, you know, that circumstantially things can't kind of add up.
Right.
And I'm not even sure that was even made sense what I just said.
No, I understood.
Okay, I'm trying to. When they came back for me, the point at which I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that this was God's call on their life was when they came back from convention.
Okay.
This last year.
Okay. From the U.S. Foursquare Convention in Anaheim?
In Anaheim.
Okay.
God just did so many remarkable things at the prayer meeting there and so forth. And I don't think that you always need those kinds of things to confirm. I think maybe God gave them those things maybe almost as much for us and the church as for them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
You know, because I think they were already had pretty much discerned that this was God, but they said, we just need something really clear to make this kind of a big change.
Yeah.
And God was merciful and provided those things, you know.
So now both of you have come to a point of peace and acceptance, knowing that this next adventure, God's going to be in it, and He's going to take care of your daughter and your son-in-law, that is like a spiritual son to both of you as well. I mean, obviously you deeply love them, and those three rambunctious little boys that are just a joy and a delight. Yeah. Now, when you guys, obviously, you're not the kind who are reluctant to support missions. You know, we always deal with people who, you know, sometimes we deal with Christians who don't get missions. You guys get it. You've been on the field. You know, you've been missionaries. You love missions, and not only that, you are a type of missionary yourself. You guys do this incredible thing, and we'll include links to your website in the show notes. But Jim and Lynn, you guys do this incredible gift where you go and you video missionaries who raise their own support. You video them, make a professional quality story of what they're doing so they can show people. And that is an amazing thing just as a gift and a ministry in and of itself. And we've worked on several projects together over the years. But did you ever in your wildest dream think that it would come this deeply, this call to serve mission?
Referring now to John and Sarah's call, I cannot imagine this being easy for any parent, grandparent. I can't even conceive of it not being hard. On the other hand, just because it's hard doesn't mean that it's not God and it's not good. And I don't want to make us sound too spiritual or anything here, but for us, it has really brought home some things. Ever since we've gotten back into missions, I'm reading the Bible differently. I'm seeing things way differently. I'm dealing with even on some of the places we've been, issues of fear and so forth. And one of the things that's really come alive is the Apostle Paul said, if there is no resurrection, if Christ is not raised from the dead, then we are among men most pitied. Pity us more than anybody else. I've heard people say, if the Christian faith isn't real, well, it's still a good way to live. And I'm saying, well, you're not living the life then. Because the life does call for sacrifice. It does call for giving things up. It is sometimes hard. It's filled with joy, but it can be very, very difficult. And this is difficult. This is hard. But there is a resurrection. Our relationship with them might be a little interrupted here now, but we are convinced beyond the shadow of a doubt that we will spend forever together with people that we love, like our daughter and our son and our grandkids. So.
Good. Well, I sure appreciate you guys letting us barge into one of the most intimate places in a parent's life, talking about your kids and your grandkids and sharing that journey with us, because I believe that not only will it help enlighten people who, that person listening to the podcast, it will help comfort those who are in process themselves, knowing that each step along the way, and we don't know how this thing's going to end, and that's the scary part for all of us. We're recording this as it happens. We don't know what the end result's going to look like. We're just going through it day by day, step by step, so that people have the real-time updates of this is what it's like in the life of a family and a congregation, of what it's like when you say, we'll go all in, and we will heed the call of Jesus Christ to reach the nations and to participate in this conspiracy of God to upright this world that's fallen over. So I thank you for it, and I sure do appreciate it, and I pray God continue to bless you. And hey, folks listening to the podcast, be sure to check out their website. It's Creative Impact Ministries. We'll include links to the show notes. These guys do an amazing job, and I tell you, they are a delight to work with. They are the real thing. You right now, my dear listener, may be wrestling with some decision that you've got to make regarding this pearl of great price. It's a struggle in your own heart and mind, but you realize that this is a pearl worth infinite value, and that the light and momentary things that we deal with here aren't worthy to be compared with it. Yeah, you may be struggling, but it is the pearl of great price. And the only right answer is yes. I'm all in. Go for it, my friend. The pearl of great price is truly worth it. Hey, if you find this podcast useful, would you mind subscribing in iTunes or Stitchers? Share it with your friends, your family on Facebook, Twitter. Maybe send them an email. And also, if you believe in this ministry of doing church planting development throughout the new dark continent of Europe and all the different things that we're involved in. If you enjoy this podcast, would you consider supporting us and becoming a partner with us? You can find out more on my website, jeffroper.com. You'll see the little bright orange button on the right-hand side of the screen there says support our work. Click there. So if you do those three things, I certainly would appreciate it.
Well, we're done now. Thanks for listening. This is Jeff Roper reminding you that the mission of God is too grand for mediocrity or average living. You were created for a purpose, and that purpose is found in the mission of God. It's your life. Now go live it.